I'm Sarai.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Seamwork Radio. So today we're talking about sewing gifts and the guilt that sometimes surrounds the holidays when it comes to sewing gifts. So today we're going to cover why we feel pressure to make gifts, how to combine different types of gifts to kind of take the pressure off a little bit, and how to make gifts feel meaningful without that intense pressure to make everything yourself. So today's question comes from Seamwork member Julie Von Knit, and her question was, do you have any sewing routines around the holidays, traditions, etc.? So Haley, what do you think? Do you have any sewing routines around the holidays?
I have a lot of routines and traditions, but most of them have more to do with cooking and baking. Growing up, I come from a very uncrafty family, which I know I've talked about before. But one of the only hand sewn item that I ever had was my Christmas stocking that my grandmother sewed. One of a handful of things she made in her life. And ever since I moved out, which is a long time ago now, I've always wanted to make me and my household of people our own stockings. And every single year I say I'm going to do it, this is going to be the year. And then I never do it. I just get so overwhelmed with all the gifts I'm sewing and the other things I'm doing that it just never makes it to the top of my priority list.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I always think I'm going to make stockings and gifts and all kinds of things. And I think that's my tradition, is just planning a lot of sewing around the holidays and then not doing it. I think that's my holiday tradition. I have made some holiday stuff. I've made a tree skirt and I've made lots of gifts in the past, but I always think I'm going to do a lot more than I actually end up doing, it seems like. So I don't know. I think that kind of leads into our topic today, because I think sometimes if you are a crafty person and if you do like to make things, you put a lot of pressure on yourself to make a lot of stuff for the holidays, and especially a lot of gifts. I definitely feel a lot of pressure that I put on myself to make a lot of gifts. What about you? Do you feel pressure to make gifts at this time of year?
I feel like I go in waves of doing that. Some years I'm yeah, I'm really into making whatever my project du jour is in that moment. I'm going to make it for everyone. Everyone's getting rope bowls. Everyone's getting tote bags or whatever it is I'm into making. And then I have a really big family, and then that gets overwhelming really quickly. So I've kind of found some ways to manage that pressure, but it's there. And it's something I have to consciously fight the urge.
Mm-hmm. I also have a large family. And so no matter if I'm going to be making or buying, it feels like a lot of pressure on the holidays. I think, we were talking about this earlier. I think one of the things that I struggle with when it comes to the holidays is dealing with a lot of feelings around buying a lot of stuff that people don't really need, and just the consumerism around it. And, you feel guilty for buying stuff. You feel guilty for not buying stuff. You feel guilty if you're not making things. There's a lot of feelings wrapped up in that. And, feelings having to do with, your relationships with people, and also your feelings around stuff and materialism. And so I always kind of struggle with that, because I personally don't like to have a lot of, I have left stuff. It's not like I'm a minimalist or something, but it always feels so excessive around the holidays.
Yeah, it can really stress me out. Not just the idea of the thing, my list of people that I would like to give gifts to, but when I receive too much, it really stresses me out.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be kind of stressful. I feel like just all the shopping that leads up to the holidays is what's stressful to me. And it's not forced shopping, but it feels almost like forced shopping. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I find that it can be kind of oppressive sometimes. But then on the flip side of it, as people who make things, we can also put a lot of pressure on ourselves to go the other direction and to spend a lot of time rather than money necessarily making gifts. And, that can be costly too. That can start to feel very burdensome if we're not careful about it. I'm sure most people can relate. The holidays just bring up a lot of feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love them. And I love celebrating. I'm a big celebrator. And I love coming up with an idea for the perfect gift for someone. And I find that like so joyful. And that's why it's really easy for me to go overboard, because I just want to love them.
Yeah. Yeah, I am a total overboard gift giver. In spite of all of this I'm saying about stuff and too much stuff, this is where the tension is for me. Like, I love giving gifts. I really like it. So I do tend to really go overboard, and I like to get people like big bundles of things, like lots of different things. And it's just like, oh, one cool thing after another. I think it could be sort of overwhelming for some people.
Yeah.
Because maybe it puts too much expectation on them. But yeah, that's my tension, is I love, love, love giving gifts. But at the same time, I'm kind of torn by the consumerism aspect of it. I'm a contradiction.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense to me.
Do you remember any particular gifts you made that are really meaningful to you, or meaningful to the people that you gave them to?
Yeah, this is a good one. So most of my family's from New England, and they are very avid Red Sox fans, which is maybe polarizing to some people listening, but they love the Red Sox. I'm not like a huge sports person. I like beer and hot dogs, so I'll go to like a game, but I'm not like a big sports person. Anyway, I was at like Joann's or something one year, and I saw they have like, all this licensed fabric, and they had Boston Red Sox like fleece. And I was like, dope. I'm totally going to make some pajama pants for my stepdad out of this, and he'll be into it. Little did I realize how truly into it he would be. He's just like a tough guy, kind of a jock. He would not like be offended in me saying this. Every time I go home, he's like so excited to put them on and like show them off. Look what I'm wearing. And he like hangs them dry and like treats them with such care. I like literally like whipped them up with a serger and like an hour, and they're just like his most favorite thing. And it was like on a whim. I just saw the fabric and I was like, yes, that's happening. So that one stands out to me just because it like brings me joy how much like stupid joy it brings him. What about you?
It's kind of similar for me. My dad, I made him a Negroni shirt, which is one of our patterns, a long time ago. I didn't know what size to make. I wasn't sure what size to make because I wanted it to be a surprise. So I didn't have his measurements or anything. So I made it, and it ended up being a little bit too small. But he still wears it, and he just wears it open, like over a t-shirt or something. But he was so proud of it when I gave it to him. He would show it off every time I come home. He'd be wearing it and kind of, look what I'm wearing. Which I think is just like so gratifying when somebody really truly appreciates something you made like that. And it's not just like, oh, thanks, you made something. That's cool. Which, that's happened sometimes too, but
yeah,
I don't know. It's very, very satisfying. It's almost as satisfying as making something for yourself that you really love.
When it gets that level of like appreciation, then yeah, totally. That's the thing with like making things for people though, is that you never know like how it will be received. Most people don't, I think, realize how much work goes into sewing things, so they're just like, oh yeah, cool, a shirt. Thanks.
Yeah. I think that's even more true for knitting things. I've knitted a lot of things for other people, and I guess this kind of gets into sort of the state of fashion, but it, like, you make a pair of socks, for example, and a hand knit pair of socks, well, for me at least, it takes quite a while to make. I don't knit every day, and it'll take me, maybe a month, 2 months sometimes to make a pair of socks. And then you give them to somebody, and sometimes they're really appreciated, but sometimes a pair of socks is not that exciting to someone because you can buy socks at Target for, 3 pairs for $5 or however much they cost. And so, there's a real difference in value there, which I think is really interesting.
I think if someone gave me something hand knit, I would cry. I'd be like, wow.
Yeah, I've made a few hand knit things for people. I made my mom a really beautiful cardigan years ago. It was really, really nice. And she really, really appreciated it. But I've also made things that didn't turn out as great when I was a newer knitter. I made Ken a cardigan one time, or a sweater. I don't remember what was it. It was just way, way too big on him. But it still took me a long time. It took me months to make. So knitting is a little bit more of a crapshoot than sewing.
Yeah, totally.
When it comes to fit. There was this article that we published a while back in Seamwork, and I wanted to read a quote from it. It's called By Hand from the Heart, and it was written by Jessica Wright, and she writes really beautifully about giving handmade gifts. But she had this quote in there that said, "All handmade items contain love, regardless of whether you've deliberately spent time meditating on the person you're making for or not. There's a love in the decision to make by hand, love in the choice of project, and love in the hours spent making," which I think was really sweet. And I think that's so true, whether or not you really are focused on the person. It might feel kind of like crazy during the holiday times and you're just trying to whip out as many gifts as possible. There's still a lot of love in just the decision to spend your time making for somebody. So I think that's important to keep in mind, because we might hold ourselves to too high a standard when it comes to gifts, especially at this time of year.
Totally.
So on that note, what tips do we have, Haley, for people who maybe want to make some gifts this year and are struggling a little bit with the guilt of it all?
Oh boy, do we have tips. Yeah, we came up with this nice long list of tips to help you kind of curb your guilt and maybe come up with some more creative ways or reasonable ways to use your creative time. Tip number 1 is to combine small sewn gifts with other handmade items like cookies, or Sarai and I are a big fan of consumable type gifts. So wine or chocolate. So this kind of takes the pressure off of this idea that you have to make oh my gosh, I have to make my mother-in-law a dress. Maybe not. Maybe you could make her a rope bowl or some tea towels or a pot holder or a wine bag or other reusable bag, and then pair those with some other items to make a little gift basket. I'm a big fan of this type of gift.
Me too. I especially love getting consumables. I love getting food items or drinks or wine. It's so lovely, and it's something you can use and doesn't take up space in your house, and everybody can appreciate it. I wanted to mention this book that I recently picked up. I don't know how I found this book, but it's called A Basket by the Door by Sophie Hansen. And she's an Australian writer, and it's a cookbook basically, but it has all different kinds of food items you can make for friends and loved ones as gifts and kind of create baskets for them. And it's not just gift baskets. It's also, when somebody is sick, things you can make and bring to them, or, things that you can take on a picnic, things like that as well. And it's really cool. There's a lot of really great ideas that I'm going to be trying to adapt, I think, this season and make some food gifts. And it's very inspiring to make a beautiful basket that combines some handmade food and or even, purchase food with a few handmade items like tea towels. I think it's so nice and usable.
Totally. This leads really well into our next tip, which are to come up with some rules or guidelines for your gift giving so you feel more confident they'll use it. And this is inspired by something that I personally like to do. I have 3 rules for gift giving. It either has to be something that I've heard someone mention before. I don't know, my husband mentioning in passing that he needs a new jacket. I will make or buy him a new jacket. An item that's pertains to something I know that person is interested in. So I know Sari likes to bake. So like getting Sari a cookbook or like a book about baking or about sourdough or something. Or if I can't think of something that checks either of those boxes, I do something consumable so I'm not like contributing to like clutter in that person's life. This like rule, I've started doing this really in the last few years, and it's made like a really big difference in like my feelings of guilt and consumerism. Oh, I lied. There's another category, experiences, gifting like experiences to people. So like getting a wine tasting or something for my in-laws because they're like really big into wine. But that makes me feel like less icky.
Yeah. That reminds me of, I saw this, I think it was before the holidays last year. I saw this graphic on Pinterest that was something like that. It had like 4 quadrants for gift giving, and it was, something they could eat, something they can read, something they can wear, and there was one other category I can't remember. I don't think it matters exactly what the categories are, but what I did is I took that and just tried to come up with ideas for each person of small gifts that fit into those categories. And it really took a lot of pressure off making decisions about what to get people, because I could just try and come up with like, what's a food item that they're going to enjoy? And it just made it a lot easier to make those decisions. So what's another kind of related idea for people who are struggling with that?
Totally. Our third gift is to attack your gift giving with like a really thorough plan. So before you start making things, before you start buying, make a big list, make a plan so you can think about what's realistic for you, and you can kind of look at your plans from a bird's eye view. Is it like really all that realistic that you're going to like sew 8 sweaters and 3 aprons? Maybe not. Maybe that's a good cue for you to like scale it back a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am a big planner when it comes to gifts because like you, I have a big family. So I feel like if I don't plan it all out, I get very stressed out.
Yeah, I'm big on this too. And I have to make a plan because I like also need to make a budget. And they're both kind of like essential for one another.
Yeah.
Tip number 4 is to assembly line a few small gifts. So pick a project that you're really into making. I do this all the time. Like last year, I made a bunch of Drew headbands. I just spent an afternoon like sewing them because they're really, really fun to sew. Like hot tip, go sew some Drew headbands because they're really fun to sew. I just spent like, I don't know, a few hours, and I made like 8 of them. And they were kind of like my junk drawer gift. Like when I was like, oh, shoot, my hairdresser. She's really nice. It's like I wanted to like, give her write her a nice little card and give her something. It was kind of a nice thing having these low pressure assembly line kind of gifts. And just because they're like assembly line and a little easier to make doesn't mean they're made with any less love.
Yeah. I think they can be really special, especially, if they're in a cool fabric. People really appreciate that kind of thing. And I'm really impressed that you make gifts for your hairdresser. That's awesome.
She like always fits me in and like gives me a good rate. And I was like, I made all these Drew headbands, and I made her a rope bowl one year too. she's just like she's a cool lady. I like her. So I just like gave her this headband, and then like I saw her later, and she was like I don't know, a couple months later, she's like, that's the best headband I've ever worn. It's the only one that stays on my head. I felt pretty cool. Felt pretty good about that. Because not only did I make it, I designed that pattern, so it was like an extra. Yeah.
I got to make some of those for myself. I am my own hairdresser, so I also always fit myself in and give myself a good rate.
You deserve it. That's the other thing about my hairdresser, who's great, is I like constantly am cutting my own hair, and she's like not snooty about it at all. She's like, nice. Haley, did you have a glass of wine and have the back part of your head? I'm like, yes, I did. She's cool. She has like just like a good punk rock attitude about it. Like, who cares? It's fine. It's hair.
Yeah, grows back.
I appreciate it. Okay, back to our tips. Think about how you can give someone time or experience together instead. You know, there's other things that you can do that are from the heart for people. It doesn't just have to be a physical item. You can spend an afternoon teaching them how to sew. That would be a really special gift.
That would.
Or just even go like get a cup of coffee and go for a walk together. The gift of time with the people we love is I think it's like the ultimate gift.
Mm-hmm. Me too. Do you know what your love language is?
It's acts of service.
Oh, mine is quality time.
Yeah.
So when people give me time, it's very special to me.
Yeah. I just like to be like, know that like their acts of service is like, I know you're thinking of me when you're not with me. Mm-hmm. So you did something nice for me.
Yeah. Yeah. They're very related.
They are very related. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. But quality time's good too. It's spectrum, you know. And our next tip, trying to make small gifts throughout the year when you need a quick project. I'm not very great at this, but Sari's good at this.
Well, you made all those Drew headbands.
That's true. I like in the couple months leading up to. That's true.
Yeah, I do try to do this. I don't like being rushed around the holidays, and I enjoy knitting socks. So I try to knit socks throughout the year, and then when the end of the year rolls around, I have some really nice handmade socks that I can gift to people. And I think it's nice. It does help to take the pressure off. There's a little bit less to think about. And handmade socks are the best. They are just so cozy and warm, and they can be so pretty. Robin, our pattern maker, she gave me this really beautiful yarn that she dyed herself that I'm going to be making into a pair of socks pretty soon. And I am so excited about it. It's just, there's something so, I don't know, lovely and tactile about knitting socks. I just love it. So.
That's the next thing I want to learn how to knit. My friend Janine just sent me her easiest sock pattern that she likes to use. So as soon as I'm going to make Charlie a hat, and when I'm done with that, I think I'm going to try my hand at socks. I'm excited. Okay, and then our final tip. Question yourself when you hear the word should. I actually think this is a good tip for like anything in your life. Mm-hmm. Are you shoulding yourself? Like you should. It's just a good question because making something for someone, it should, there we go, be something that's joyful. It shouldn't be like something that you feel like you like have to do. If you don't have the time or the energy, you don't like owe it to anyone else to make them things.
Yeah, I think the only time to use should is when you're talking about you shouldn't use should too much.
Yeah.
I had a friend who would say, don't should on people.
Yeah. You shouldn't. It's rude to should on people.
I mean, I catch myself doing this all the time, not just with, making things, but just in life is, the pressure we put on ourselves day to day. I think this is just one aspect of it. And whenever I hear myself saying to myself that, I should have been able to do that, I should be spending more time on this, that's a red flag. That's a signal that there's something off and I'm not really being kind to myself. Mm-hmm. So these are some, I think they're really helpful tips as we enter the holidays. So to recap our tips for today, combine some small sewn goods with some other handmade items like cookies or wine or chocolate, and maybe make a little gift basket. And we'll put a link to that book called A Basket by the Door in the show notes if you want to check that out as well. I really liked it. And then the second tip, think up some rules or guidelines for your gift. And that way you'll feel a little bit more confident that they'll actually use it. Make a list or a plan, and that way you can kind of plan out what's actually going to be realistic for you to make. Assembly line a few small gifts. That'll help you get a little bit more done. And there's some things that you can sew that are really, really fun to sew in an assembly line way, like the Drew headband. Think about how you can give someone time or an experience, maybe instead of gifts. or instead of physical gifts, I should say. You could try making some small gifts throughout the year when you need a quick project. So maybe this is something you can think about for next year, and you'll really thank yourself. Believe me, you will really thank yourself if you do that. And lastly, when you hear yourself using the word should around all of this gift giving, just kind of let it go. I think it's important that we're just all kind to ourselves at this time of year, as well as kind to other people. So maybe that's just something to keep in mind if you hear yourself shoulding yourself a little bit too much around the holidays. Then, let it go.
Yeah.
So if you want to read that article that I mentioned that's in Seamwork, it's called By Hand from the Heart, and you can look that up. We'll put that in the show notes as well. And if you liked this episode, leave us a review. We have a review here from Huffmaster45. She left us a really nice review. She said, "Interesting and informative. This podcast just keeps getting better and better. It has evolved from the beginning with interesting stories to discuss fitting. Thank you for helping us all improve our knowledge about sewing." So that was really, really sweet. So if you're thinking about what you're going to sew as you head into the new year, it might also be a good time to pick up our free downloadable copy of our sewing planner. The planner is full of worksheets and prompts to help you plan a mini wardrobe of garments that really work well together and can fit your personal style, and it's totally free. So if you want to check it out, you can download it for free at seamwork.com/go/planner. And that's it from us today. I'm Sarai.
I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio.
Seamwork Radio is brought to you by the team at Seamwork. Seamwork's an online community that supports you in creating a wardrobe that feels right for you. When you join us at Seamwork, you become part of our private community of makers, and you also get access to monthly sew-along classes, a library of over 200 sewing patterns, and tons of great resources to help guide you through the sewing adventure that you choose. Podcast listeners can get half off a Seamwork Unlimited membership, which means you can download as many of those 200 plus patterns as you want at any time, and our community will be there to guide and support you. If you'd like to join us for half off, just visit seamwork.com/go/podcast50. You can also find us on Instagram at Seamwork, or visit our YouTube channel, which is called Seamwork Video. We love hearing from you, so let us know if there's a topic or a personal story that you'd like us to cover. Thanks for listening to Seamwork Radio.